Good morning, boys and girls. Today we're going to begin our unit on poetry. We are going to learn about a poem by Emily Dickinson. The poem we are going to look at is called The Soul Unto Itself. But before we read the poem, we're going to look at the structure of the book that the poem is in. So the first thing that we notice when we look at a book is the title. So the title of this book is Poems of Emily Dickinson. So who can tell us, what does the title of a book do? Robbie. Great answer. Yes, the title of a book tells us what our book is about. Very good. The next thing that we're going to look at is this is the picture on the cover. So this picture is a black and white picture that's from one of the scenes in one of the poems. Usually, whenever you have a book, you have an illustrator. Steve, what do you think an illustrator is? Great job. Yes, an illustrator is someone who draws the pictures. Very good. Well, this book doesn't have a lot of pictures. So it says Drawings by Robert Kipnis. So we can look inside the book. We don't see pictures from an illustrator, but we do see drawings by Robert Kipnis. Another feature of a book is the spine. This spine tells us the title of the book, Poems of Emily Dickinson, and the bottom says Crowell. So the spine helps us find this on a bookshelf at the library. Another part of a book is the back. So the back of this book has a drawing. Does everyone see? This is a drawing by our person who did the drawings. Tiffany, can you please tell us what's the first part of a book? The cover. Very good. And what do we look for on the cover? Larry. The author. Very good. And who is our author? Very good. So what's the next thing that we looked at? Thomas. The spine. Very good. Great job, Thomas. And the back is the back cover. Very good. So now that we've gone over the physical features of a book, we're going to look at the poem's format and structure, or how it's written. So before we start this lesson, who would like to share with us, what do you already know about poetry? Stephanie, what do you already know about poetry? Very good. That poems rhyme. Now that is true for some poems, but not all. Thank you. Thomas, what do you think makes something a great poem? You think a great poem is because it's shorter than a book? Okay, very good. Rebecca, would you like to add to Thomas's definition of what makes something a poem? Great, thank you. So now I need you to get out your copy of this poem. Remember, I have a copy of our book, but you have a printed copy of our poem. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to get your copies out. Okay, very good. So, as I said earlier, the title of our poem is The Soul Unto Itself. So, what do you notice that's interesting about the structure or format of this poem? The first thing that I notice is how our sentences are short compared to what we see when we read books or novels. This first line only has 7 words. That's not a lot of words compared to novels. The next thing that I notice about this poem is that each group of lines is not indented like a paragraph. So each group of lines is not indented like a paragraph. And I also notice that every group of lines in our poem consists of 4 lines. So in poems, we don't have paragraphs. Who can tell us what groups of lines are called in poems? John, what are these groups of lines called? Stanzas. Very good. So a stanza is a group of lines in a poem. So now let's keep looking at our poem to see what else we notice. Nikki, when you look in between stanzas, what do you notice? A blank space. Very good. So there's a blank space between each stanza. As I continue reading our poem, I notice there are a lot of commas, semicolons, and dashes used by the author, especially at the ends of each line. So I want you to think for just a minute. Why would our author use these different types of punctuation in the poem? So remember, we're going over poems by Emily Dickinson. Roberto, why do you think the author is using a comma here and a dash here and these semicolons? Very good. So you think the author, the poet, is telling us to pause. Okay. Lance, what is the reason that the author may want us to pause? Very good. So we can understand something important. So I notice one more thing about this poem. When I look at our poem, I notice that this poem only has 7 stanzas. So when we're reading a book, there's a lot more than 7 paragraphs in each chapter usually, right? This poem's also not even 2 pages. When we're reading a book, it's going to be a lot more than just 2 pages and 7 stanzas. Okay, so we've noticed that this poem has shorter lines than most books. It's shorter lines than most books. Instead of paragraphs, it has stanzas. Then we see that there's a blank space between each stanza. We also noticed, Kathy, what's something else that we learned today about this poem? Very good. Different types of punctuation. And where do we usually see the different types of punctuation? At the end. Great job. So the last thing that I noticed that we pointed out in this poem, Melanie, what can you tell us? Very good. It's short and it's not even 2 pages and just 7 stanzas. Y'all did a really wonderful job today on our lesson in poetry. So remember, you always want to read the title. You want to look at the author or illustrator. You want to look at the spine and the back. Sometimes it'll have information that you need. Great job, everyone.